Okay, let's get started with introductions. First of all, welcome. Thank you for joining our webinar on Are You Prepared for a Cyber Attack? I'm Judy Miller. I'm the Managing Director here at Protect Cybersecurity, which was founded here about 26 years ago here in Coral Gables. Today's webinar will last about an hour with about 45 minutes of presentation, and then we'll leave time at the end for your questions and any kind of interactive discussions you might want to have with the cybersecurity consultants. As a start, let me thank the Financial and International Business Association for co-sponsoring this event. Welcome to all of their members, and also to Silka Gonzalez, the founder of Protect, for her support of and resources to put this webinar together. Quickly, today's speakers are Esteban Faro. He is Director of IT Security Consulting here at Protect. He's been here for about 20 years. Esteban leads all of our practice areas, including penetration testing, PCI compliance, digital forensics, incident response, security assessments, and risk assessments. He's quite a veteran of the industry. He's helped many of our banking clients with incident preparedness and response, including testing response plans, conducting tabletop exercises. He's also responded to dozens of data breaches at banks and other organizations. Prior to joining Protect, he led attack and penetration testing assignments for PwC in London, and he managed the company's IT security practice in Argentina. Viva Puthran is an information security consultant here at Protect. She received her master's degree in cybersecurity from Carnegie Mellon University. At Protect, she handles digital forensics, incident response, risk assessments, and other assignments. She's quite passionate about protecting organizations from data breaches through various means that we're going to discuss today. Prior to joining Protect, she worked as part of the incident response team at PwC in India, investigating ransomware attacks, data breaches, and aiding in tabletop exercises, incident management, and security awareness training. Next slide. Today we'll discuss lessons learned from past attacks on financial institutions, and then we're going to discuss several ways that you can better protect your organization and reduce threats, including best practices for incident response plans, tabletop exercises, readiness assessments, threat hunting, and business impact analysis plans. With that introduction then, Esteban, would you please start us off?
Thank you, Judy, and good morning, everybody, and thanks for being here today. Let's start the presentation. We talk about some statistics. According to Statistics Market Insight, the global cost of cybercrime is expected to jump in the next 4 years from 9.222 trillions in 2024 to 13.82 trillions by 2028. The rise of cybercrime, can be attributed to a growing number of people using internet to work purposes, obviously personal or work purposes, providing more opportunities to cyber criminals. And we have to remember that due to COVID-19 crisis, that made organizations to start relying more and more on the internet to perform tasks remotely. Another interesting numbers on the bottom on the right, you had 80% of the reported cybercrimes are shared attributed to phishing attacks in the technology sector. And ransomware cost will be increased around $265 billion by 2031. So in this context, what we can do? And the answer is just to be prepared. There is no another way. We need to make sure that all the controls that we have in place in our organization to prevent, detect, mitigate, eradicate, and restore our services from any type of cybersecurity incident are working properly. Next, please. Okay, so let's start with this first case. This is about an employee that was terminated from the company Cash App. Okay, this employee has access to customer financials information because that was part of his job. And when he was terminated, I guess for revenge, he decided to steal all the customer information, which includes customer names, brokers' accounts, portfolios, values, holdings, almost everything. So the important thing here about this case also is that this employee was able to do that after he was terminated, and the and he was able to compromise around 8.2 million current and former customers accounts. So what went wrong here? We have first that the disclosure of this situation, they spent 4 months before they told the SEC and even the customer that they had this security breach, which also leave all the victims, the customers, with a potential exposure to identity theft. Also, the company did not help the customers to monitor the credit score or protect against the identity, which create a problem also for the company in terms of uh, how good the company is in these kind of situations. And finally, which is a given, this one is the employee access to data after he was terminated. So the lesson learned that we have here is first, we don't know exactly why they delayed to report the incident to the SEC and the customers. However, based on our experience, incident response plans are lacking in detail about reporting requirements. And more important is sometimes it's not clear who is responsible for reporting the situation. Um, this is best practice when when employee is terminated or leave the organization for whatever reasons, all his access or her accesses needs to be revoked or disabled, and user account and access related to those accounts needs to be reviewed regularly. And finally, you need to be prepared for the worst case scenario, which also means that you need to have something in place to help the victims, if that were the case. Next slide, please. This second case is about the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China's US broker dealer that was hit in 2023 by a ransomware attack, and as a result, disrupted US Treasury market. This attack caused a temporary debt of $9 billion to the Bank of New York Mellon. Now, since the enterprise mail system was compromised, the employee has to switch to Google email, and also the bank decided to pay the ransomware, maybe due to fear or loss of data or inadequate backups. In this specific case, the lesson learned that we have is, first, you need to have an alternative communication plan during an incident, which also needs to be controlled by the organizations. You cannot rely on employees' personal emails or cell phones. The second one is that since they pay for the ransom, we can assume that they have some issues in data recovery procedures. So that's the key, and it's very important for ransomware, is that your data recovery procedures needs to be up to date and needs to be tested regularly. I would suggest and whenever it's possible, your backup strategy, you should use the 3-2-1, which means that make 3 copies, 2 in different medias, and 1 sent offsite, just in case. And finally, ransomware. The question is, do we pay or we cannot pay? Paying ransomware is not always a recommendation, mainly because that no guarantee they are going to solve the problem. And also the US government is strongly discourage all private companies and citizens for paying ransom. From the financial institution, not really a regulation state that you cannot pay. However, this is a catch. You have the OFAC regulation, which says that you cannot do transactions with individuals or entities that is on the OFAC list, which is narrow down the possibility that you pay. Now in Florida, there is the State Cybersecurity Act, which is more for government agencies, which, it's state, county, and municipality agencies. They say that they cannot follow or comply with the ransom demands. So in that sense, they cannot do it. And now I'm going to turn over to Viva.
Thank you, Esteban. So now that we've learned through the case studies how important it is to be prepared for an incident, uh, the main question is it's not about if your organization would become a victim to a cyber attack. It's about when your organization would be a victim to a cyber attack. And when that happens, you really want to be prepared for it. So the NIST incident response life cycle puts forth preparation as the first phase of the entire incident response process. You can also see that there is a correlation between post-incident activity to preparation, which literally means that whatever you learn from an incident after an incident happens, and if you are faced by an incident, you need to apply those lessons to help your organization prepare better so that you're protected from it in the future. So today I would be walking through some of the main ways in which you can prepare your organization for an incident. We'll start with the most common one, which is the incident response plan. We'll talk about the best practices involved in it, what exactly from our experience we've seen lacks in ideal incident response plans and how you can improve your existing plans. What sections should you include and make sure your plans are addressing? We'll also talk about how regular testing of those incident response plans are important so that you can test your business activities in case of an incident. So let's start off with what an incident response plan is. Like any other security document or policy and procedure that you have in your organization, an incident response plan also is a document which sets out everything that you need to do during an incident. Now, it can be explaining what are different people's roles and responsibilities during an incident, what are the regulatory requirements involved, how can you deal with an incident, who should you report it to, how do you keep your customers informed, how do you keep your your board members informed of the incident. All of this is very well detailed out in an incident response plan. Now, one key point that you need to consider while framing your incident response plan is also including, like we like doing it that way, is also including something called job aids. The main reason for this is because an incident response plan is like a 40-page document. And let's assume one day you're hit by something like a ransomware or a data breach. You don't want to open the 40-page document and be like, what is my responsibility during an incident? Or let's assume you're the CISO of the organization. You don't want to open that 40-page document and have to go through all that while you are such a crucial state in the organization or as part of the incident. So the easier way to do or the easier way to navigate through all of this is by having job aids. Job aids are basically like, we like doing it this way. We like giving out one-page flyer documents to different members in your organization so that they know what is their responsibility during an incident. So it's basically like a checklist approach that we follow, where, let's assume a CISO gets a one-page flyer which says he needs to report it to the customers, needs to report it to the regulators, needs to report it to the board members, right? And once you're done with all of that, you can just tick all of those off. So that's a very nice and organized way to basically keep in track of everything that you as an individual in the organization needs to do during an incident. The other thing that is very important to include in your incident response plans are playbooks. Now, every type of attack does not involve a same response. Everything is different, and how you respond to each attack differs. So how I would respond to a ransomware is very different from how I would respond to a data breach, to probably a DDoS attack. All of them have different regulatory requirements. Some probably have a shorter time in which you need to report the incident. Some have a longer time. And all of their recovery processes are also different. the best way to deal with all of this is by having specialized playbooks in place. So like you can see in this diagram, we have an example of a ransomware playbook that we've created for one of our clients, which basically walks through the different steps in the incident response cycle and tells you what you need to do at different steps for a ransomware incident, right? Now, that is very crucial because you need to know what exactly, how do I detect a ransomware? What should I check in place if I'm hit by a ransomware? How do I report it to? Who do I report it to? All of this, right? So all of those things are very important, and playbooks really help out, sorting all of that out. Your incident response plans also needs to include escalation procedures. Now, the main reason for this is, let's assume you're faced with an incident when your CISO is on a vacation. How are you going to respond to the incident? Who is now responsible for reporting this incident to your regulators or to your board of directors or to your customers, right? So there needs to be alternative people in charge or like a backup plan in place to basically take care of the incident when the person in charge is not there, right? Because it can happen at any point. So you need to include all of those procedures as well in your incident response plans. We'll be talking about communication channels in the next few slides, but communication or communicating with various teams in your organization is very important during an incident, and I'll highlight or I'll talk about it more in the next few slides. So when it comes to team structure and roles, ideally you want to frame an incident response team. One thing that you need to remember is an incident response team does not only include technical people. It's resolving and responding to an incident is a team activity, and you need people from different parts in your organization. You need people from the technical side, you need people from the security side, from the IT side, you need people from the legal side, from the HR side, from probably your media marketing teams. You need all of their help. You need people from, help from the board of directors. You need all of their help during an incident. So your ideal incident response team is not just your security team, is basically one person or two, three people from different teams so that you can collaborate with each other and help resolve the incident in a more effective manner. So one of the main steps is to develop this incident response team well in advance. Now, we understand if you're a small business and you might not have a specialized incident response team that does just incident response all the time. You might have an IT team, or you might have a security team, and or you might have like, probably like some security vendors who are taking care of your security, like probably an MSSP or something like that. Now, you would want to set up communication channels with all of these people, make all of them informed, and include them in your current plans, right? That is a very important step, because when an incident happens, you don't want to have questions of like, okay, who should be handling this tool? Where do I get logs from? Who do I contact for this, right? You want to have all of their contact information, and you want their buy-in to help you during an incident, right? They should be willing to help you during an incident, and they should have the expertise to do that. So it's important to develop that team. Even though you don't have a specialized team, you need to assign certain roles and responsibilities. So let's assume your security manager works as an incident commander during an incident and takes care or overleads the entire incident, right? Probably someone from your media team can act as a communications lead. Probably your CISO can probably be responsible for notifying the regulators. All of this is decisions that you need to take well in advance before the incident happens, and include in your current plans and procedures to help you prepare for an incident in the future. It's also important that not only do you assign roles and duties and everyone, their names are probably mentioned in the plan, it's also important to give them the necessary training to respond to an incident, right? So let's assume you're faced with a data breach and you want to investigate at least whether you've been breached or not. Like, that's the basic thing that you need to investigate. Do you have the expertise to do so, right? Does your security team have it? If not, is there a third party vendor that you can reach out to for incident response help or advice? Are there, do you have their contacts with you so that you can, immediately reach out to them? Do they have the expertise? All of this is something that you need to keep in mind while you're building your team. So let's go on to training and awareness. I spoke about training already in terms of training your employees or training your security team and people who are part of the incident response team. But the training does not stop there. You also need to train your employees in the organization. So let me give you an example. Most of the time, the first person to see the initial compromise or the initial infection to your environment during a cybersecurity incident is a regular employee. So let's assume a regular employee in some department clicks on a phishing email, probably downloads an attachment, executes some kind of file, and then realizes, oh no, this was a phishing mail, I made a mistake, right? Now you need to build that culture within your organization of them reporting that incident to whoever is responsible, right? So the employees should be made aware that in case they do something like this, the first thing they need to do is report it to the IT team or report it to the security team. You need to make them aware of who to report it to, and also like tell them that this is not, you don't have to face some consequence of it. So they probably have like multiple questions. Oh no, I clicked on a phishing email, now probably my credentials are breached, probably people have access to my system, I'm unsure of what I've done. Would that affect like my bonus in the future? These are all questions that they might have. So you need to clarify all of them, conduct regular trainings with them, make them aware that in case they do something like this, the first person that they need to, or immediately that they need to reach out to, are your IT and security teams, right? So this is very important. Also, it is important that as newer threats are coming out, you need to keep them informed of being being more secure and taking care of security from from a very as their first priority. That is something that you need to take care as well. So let's go to communication protocols, which I kind of like touched up on earlier, and I'll elaborate on it more over here. So like I said, when you're dealing with an incident, it's just not one team, right? It's multiple people involved. There's like an impact to probably your customers. There's probably a brand reputation involved. You probably need assistance from other external incident response teams. You need help from your ISPs. You need to probably consult the regulators, get some legal advice, report the incident to the regulators. All of this is involved. Now when you're talking to all of these people, it's important to use a secure and safe communication channel. Like Esteban said in one of the case studies, you don't revert back to your personal emails or personal modes of communication just because your current, during an incident, your current infrastructure is compromised and you don't want to use that, but you don't revert back to your personal stuff because you're exfiltrating a lot of sensitive data out of your company or your corporate environment. So you need to think ahead in time of what backup channels, like let's assume Slack, something like that you're going to use for communicating with your team members during an incident. All of this needs to be decided prior to actually being faced with an incident, because you don't want to keep this small decision making after an incident happens, right? There was this conference that I attended recently where one of the interesting things they said was they basically have a AI based chatbot which is isolated from the rest of the environment, where all the incident response team members would communicate all their findings using that particular chatbot. So it depends on how you want to set up your communication channel, but it's important that you're using a secure and a safe one, because the attackers always want to know whether you're investigating, whether you're doing something to patch up stuff, whether you're doing something to stop their access, right? They always want to know that, and they don't want to be detected. So they'll always keep a lookout for all of that, and it's important that we have these backup communication channels in place prior to the incident itself. So regular testing of your incident response plans is a very crucial step. Like, unless you test them, you'll never know what is going right and what is going wrong. One of the best ways to test it is using tabletop exercises. So it's basically where, probably like a third party vendor can come in, can simulate an entire incident. Let's assume like a ransomware incident. So it's not actually affecting your organization, but it's a simulated attack on your organization, just to see how you are responding to it. And this is very crucial because you'll understand what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, how you can improve your incident response plans according to whatever you've learned from your tabletop exercises, and how you can better prepare yourself, right? So this gives you, the live simulation of everything, which is as close to a real incident. I think one of the best practices is also to update your IRP after, after a tabletop exercise, so that whatever you've learned or the lessons that you've learned from it is also being incorporated in your incident response plans. It's a good practice to update your incident response plans at least annually if you're not doing so. And some of the main gaps that I think we've conducted a lot of the tabletop exercises, for multiple clients. But some of the main gaps that we've noticed is everyone prioritizes their needs, right? So let's assume there's a ransomware, and this the CISO is thinking only about security, not thinking about anything else. The media, the PR team is probably thinking, oh, what is the reputation involved? Let's do that. Let's get back to business, right? And not thinking about anything else. We can't be down. We can't go out of business. Let's think only about that. So it's like everyone thinks only about their needs, but they fail to collaborate with each other and think what is best for the whole company as a whole, like for the whole organization on the whole, right? So that is a gap that we commonly see while we are conducting tabletop exercises, and a lot of organizations face that. So just deviating a little bit, apart from all the things that is involved in the incident response plans and testing them, there are other additional things that you can do if you want to enhance your incident readiness. One is conducting forensic readiness assessments. Now, this goes by different terms. We will call it incident readiness assessment. People call it ransomware readiness assessment, whatever you may call it. It all means the same. So it's basically identifying gaps in your current logging mechanisms. So let me give you an example. So I was working once, I was investigating an incident once, and I think it was a data breach. And there was, so the first thing that you do is ask the client for logs, right? So the client gives us the logs. There was this particular log which is called the web application firewall log. So I think some of you might have a web application firewall on all your applications. Now that is basically used to monitor your incoming requests and stuff like that. There's a field in the web application firewall logs which basically says whether the firewall is blocking it or is not blocking it. That particular field was not configured to log while I was investigating the logs. Now, why that is important? That is so important because every log entry basically has that particular field. And if I see an attempt for probably an attack in that particular log, let's assume something like an SQL injection or anything like a web-based attack, I also need to see whether it's successful or not, right? So if there is an attempt, the only way I can ascertain whether it's successful or not is by checking that particular log entry. Now that was missing, and that was a huge limitation to my investigation. So there are certain things like this which are limitations to your forensic investigations just because of how your logs are configured to log, the retention of logs and all of that. which is why forensic readiness assessments help out with this. So what they exactly do is they help find out gaps in your current logging mechanisms, whether you have the right retention. So let's assume you faced a cyber attack 2 years back and you come to us and you're like, okay, can you help us investigate this and find out what is the root cause? And I'm like, okay, let me see your log retention. You might probably have logs only for a year. And I'm like, okay, how do I go back like 2 years back and figure out what exactly happened, right? And that happens a lot because most of the time when attackers attack your organization, it's not that they get access to your organization on day one and conduct the attack on day two. They sit for months in your organization undetected, and then they finally drop the bomb, right? So for us to backtrack so far and investigate your logs, for that to take place and for us to get to the root cause of the entire incident, we need logs in place. We need the exact fields to be logged, right? So for all of that, forensic readiness assessments really help out because we review the critical logging fields, the log retention, and identify areas in which you can improve this so that in case, let's assume you are faced by a cyber attack in the future, you can easily investigate, and like whoever you go to investigate for the cyber attack, they can easily investigate and get to the root cause of the incident. Another very good thing, which is almost like a buzzword these days, is threat hunting. Um, Threat hunting is a very good proactive approach of checking your environment for threats, right? So, like I said, the attacker sits probably undetected in your network for multiple months before actually conducting the attack, right? From the time that they initially get access to your network. Threat hunting helps you identify the attack at those points, right? So the point at which they are sitting on a stealth mode in your network is when like a threat hunter would probably come in and probably hunt for threats, find something and help you with it. So it helps in detecting an incident before a major incident actually happens. So it basically involves actively searching in all your network, in your endpoints, in all your logs to find any indicators of compromise very early on in the cycle so that you're not coming in after the incident has happened. You're kind of trying to prevent it when it's really small, right? So this is a very good proactive approach of doing so as well. Then there's something called the business impact analysis. Now, like I told before, when an incident happens, it's not just technical damage, it's a lot of damage to your organization as well. There was this one bank that came to us recently and was like, we were under attack and we've been out of business for 3 days. Everything is shut down. We can't access our laptops. We can't do any kind of work, right? Now, the main thing over here is they've lost a lot of business as well. Their customers are impacted as well. The most important thing during a cyber attack is not just the technical part, but is also the impact to your business. You want to minimize the impact as much as possible. And for that, business impact analysis really helps because what exactly happens during a business impact analysis is they identify what are your critical business processes involved, estimate how much recovery time you need for each of these processes, and how you can minimize the financial loss which is caused by any of these processes being down, right? So it gives you a detailed plan of how you can get back to business quickly with the least amount of loss. And that's exactly what you want to do during an incident, right? So your current business continuity plans, your disaster recovery plans, all of them are tested, and all of them are results from all of that is basically taken into consideration to frame your business impact analysis. All of this in total basically helps support decision making during an incident or a crisis. So I would stop with that, but I think one key takeaway which I would just want to convey to all of y'all is you never know when it's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen at some point to everyone. It's better to be prepared for it in advance rather than, regretting about it later and facing a lot of damage later. So do as much as you can, even if it's small little steps that you can to improve your incident readiness within your organization, whether you're a small business or whether you're a huge corporation. Take those tiny steps so that you can improve your organization in the future and be prepared for an incident in the future. So I would just say that we have the chat open. You can start typing in your questions. We'll get to them. But before that, I have a quick quiz for all of you. If you can just scan this QR code, you can just take out your phone, scan the QR code. You can join the quiz. You can probably enter, it probably asks you for your name. You can enter your name, or you can just enter a code name that you use. Or the other way to do it is, if you're already on your laptops, you can just go to slido.com and enter this code and join this quiz. It's a very small quiz. It's mainly to just see what you've learned through this session. Yes, I'm just going to wait for a couple of minutes for at least most of y'all to join. I see we have like 63 participants. So yeah. Okay, so just to, I think more people are joining and I'm going to wait for a couple of minutes, but it's fastest finger first. So you get the right answer, as well as whoever answers it first gets more points. So let's see how that goes. Okay, let's reach the 30 mark and then I'll probably get started. Okay. Okay, let me start. So you should be able to see the first question on your screens as well. Else you can see it over here and mark your choice. Remember, there's like very close options, but there's one correct answer. Okay. So I think 93% said minimizing. Okay, what is a primary objective of an incident readiness plan? Minimizing the impact of security incident. I think 7% said preventing all security incidents. Okay, let's see what the right answer is. Yeah, so the right answer is minimizing the impact of security incidents, which most of you got it right. The main idea is, again, you cannot prevent a security incident. I don't think anyone can prevent it. I think recently MITRE got breached as well. So everyone was talking about how, having the best security posture, they create all the techniques and tactics. They talk about threat actors out there. They do everything security related. They help spread knowledge about security, but at the end, anyone can get breached. So you cannot prevent it from happening, but you can minimize the impact as much as possible with an incident readiness plan. This is the second question. We just have 3 questions, so it's a quick quiz. I spoke about this, so if everyone was attentive, then they would know this. Okay. So, yeah, a lot of people say 1 year, some say quarterly, sure, like the more you do it, the better it is. Uh, I would say the guideline goes as 1 year. Just because it's not just updating it, you also need to inform your team members about it, and you also need to test it, right? So ideally, by the time all of that gets over, it takes a year. So the best practice is once a year, but we don't mind if you do it quarterly as well. For sure. Yeah, this is the last question. Okay. Yeah, so during a tabletop exercise, who typically participates? A cross-functional team representing various departments is absolutely the right answer. I think 8% of y'all, most of y'all got it right. 8% got CISO and security team. Ideally, you want CISO and security team plays a very important role during an incident response or even a tabletop exercise. But ideally, you want people from from the legal team, from your HR, from probably your media team, your PR team. You want people from different teams because they also play a crucial part during an incident. So the right answer is 92%. And let's look at the leaderboard. Glenn's first. And then, yeah, we have AB, Domino's, Julio, and Primus. Good job, guys. I think all of y'all did a really good job. Okay, so I'll pass it on to Judy to handle the questions, and hopefully we'll get to answering them.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Esteban and Viva. That was really interesting. Appreciate you doing that. As a reminder, we recorded the webinar. I'll be sending it out later to all of you. Also, we'll send you an invite to our next webinar, which is May 29th. It's be quite interesting. It's on how to mitigate your legal and technical risk of having a breach. On the legal side, we have the chair of the Carlton Fields cybersecurity practice here in Miami, who's going to talk about reducing your liability. We have a cybersecurity blogger who follows recent legislation regulation, who's going to be talking about an interesting new law in Florida. It's awaiting the governor's signature, but it would give businesses safe harbor from liability if they implement the NIST cybersecurity framework. And then finally, one of our other consultants here is going to talk about some technical measures that you can take to reduce the chance and risk of a data breach. Now we have a few minutes for questions. Let me see what we have here in the chat. I've got one over here. Viva, this would be for you, although you've covered a lot of ways in which an organization can prepare for an incident. What's the minimum that a small bank can do to prepare for an incident?
Yeah, so I think I've spoken about like multiple things, but I think the least that you can do is at least have an incident response plan and test it through a tabletop. That's the least that you can do. You don't need to do probably the business impact analysis and the threat hunting regularly and like the readiness assessments and stuff like that. But as a small business, you can at least have an incident response plan and at least test that. That's the minimum that you can do. But obviously, if you're like a bigger corporation and you want to do more things, then there's like multiple ways in which you can enhance your incident readiness.
Stepan, what's the best way to recover from an incident?
The best way to recover from an incident? That's a very tricky question. That all depends on the type of the incident that you have, because it could be an external incident or internal incident, depends on who are the actors and the type of situation that you have. But the first thing is you also need to isolate. It has to be very clear what was, let's say, a stolen type of information that was taken. And based on that, they start narrowed down. Okay, from the extent investigation is narrowed down is from where they were able to compromise or gain access to that specific place where they took the information or not. They might be taking the information from different places, which then is going to create a big investigation. But the first thing is you need to determine is, if possible, the root cause and what are the areas that were compromised. And based on that, then you can start implementing controls and start, reducing the scope and restore everything that you have and put it back in place.
I think you addressed this, Esteban, but the question is, are you allowed to pay ransom to the attacker in a case of a ransomware attack?
Again, tricky question. Paying is not always recommended. And we all know that if we pay for a ransom, we are funding criminals first, and we can potentially funding a terrorist group, which is also considered a crime. It's obvious, and we might have some fine and legal consequence. But regulation itself, at least for financial institutions, that says not to pay, except for the OFAC regulation that we cannot do transactions with individuals or entities defined in the OFAC list. There is nothing that says that we cannot do it. But again, the best approach is always, and this is based on a case-by-case basis, and the best approach is just to talk to the legal counsel and determine what is the best approach, even with law enforcement, because maybe Secret Service or FBI, they tell you pay because we can track what they're going to do. So those kind of things, you need to work together with legal counsel and law enforcement.
And there's also, I know here in Florida, I think this is passed or it's about to be signed. There's a ban on governments paying ransomware. So it could vary state by state. So the best thing probably is to check with your lawyer, but increasingly, it's very frowned upon to pay ransomware.
Yeah, the talking about is the State Cybersecurity Act. But that's for government. It's not financial institutions. And
Right.
yes, they say that you cannot comply with the ransom demands.
Okay, and then I'm asked one more question and then give some information and close it out. Esteban, how do you choose scenarios you could both answer this, for a tabletop exercise? Like a bank approaches you and says, I want to do a tabletop. How do you arrive at what of the scenarios?
You want to start, Viva, or I start? Oh, I can start.
Yeah.
First of all, let's say we decide based on the industry what are the more type of threat that you can have, the most common one, and we also discuss with the team. It's okay, what they think that they are potentially have weaknesses, or where they think that they have some areas that they need to be emphasized. That's first approach. The second approach is we go over all the communications that you have internally, or all the different scenarios that you already have defined in your incident response plan, because we need to review your incident response plan, because we need to know kind of ahead is how you're going to react, because if not, we are not able to determine if you're doing things correctly or not. So all your escalation procedures, and based on the escalation procedures, we can determine, okay, let's do this scenario, specific unauthorized access, and let's see what happens if we remove the person who has to make the decision that day. He has to take the day off for whatever reason, how the team reacts. So that's how we start building all the different type of tabletop exercise. Only some of them, and then we validate that with you if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, I think just to add to Esteban, I think one thing that I like doing as well is asking for what kind of, like, in case you have playbooks for particular type of scenarios, asking you for those playbooks, because it's really easy to put everything into writing in your documents and just have it there, but it's more harder for all your team members to know about it and be informed about it. So it's nice to run over one of those scenarios that you have probably a playbook on, and where we can navigate through different parts of it and see whether all your team members know what is in your own playbook, right? Like, so it might be different for different organization, but you should know what is there in your playbook. So whether your team members know what is there in that and whether they're taking steps according to their playbook.
And then just one more comment, then I'll close it out. Esteban, could you explain the role like that we play during these tabletops? I know, maybe explain, we have a facilitator, but then we also have the role that you usually play, which is, I know note taker isn't the right word, but observer.
Yes, all the tabletop exercise, we are two consultants doing that. One is the facilitator, the other one is the person who observes. And because, you know, while you are facilitating the case, it's really difficult to read body language answers and be all, because remember, they are going to this type of exercise, they involve different departments, different people and everything. And you need to understand what they're saying. And that's why we have someone that the only thing that you do is just take a note and potentially can say something just to make the case better. But most of the time it's just to understand if you are answering correctly or not.
That's right. Well, thank you all
I
for
think,
attending.
Judy, we have
Yes, go ahead,
one.
Viva.
Yeah, I
ahead.
think we have one question in the chat.
Okay, I didn't see it.
Probably answer that. I can read it out. It's from David. Is there a situation where a cybercrime emanates from inside an organization? I think if you mean an insider threat, like I'll try answering it and then I'll pass it on to Esteban. So if you mean an insider threat by someone within your organization, yes, that is possible. That happens a lot of times. And one thing that we've always noticed is that is super easy to do, right? Because your employees have access to all the data. They have access to everything. There's nothing where an attacker from the outside needs to breach or needs to find out an exploit within your system to attack. They already are in your environment. They already have access to everything. We just need to exfiltrate it out. So we see a lot of organization when they are framing their when they're framing their security as well, they're like, oh, for our internal employees, we don't have a VPN, but if anyone wants to access it from external, then they need to connect via VPN and do a 2FA and all of that. And even like, let's assume a data loss prevention system or a software on your environment that really helps a lot in detecting any outgoing emails, any outgoing sensitive information that probably is being exfiltrated out. A lot of organizations also tell that, okay, we have it on the servers, but we don't have it on the workstations, because who's going to go on a workstation and exfiltrate out data? But what if an employee in your organization is probably trying to exfiltrate out data? Are you taking care of that? That is something that you need to consider as well. So you need to consider that they have the highest level of privilege in your organization, and you need to take care of insider threat also as equally as important or more important than an external attacker hacking.
Yeah, we had a case once. We had a case once where we were it was a company a big e-commerce company that outsourced their IT, and we were about 5 minutes away from holding a meeting with the top people to tell them that we had found the malicious code. And right before the meeting, the malicious code disappeared. So definitely insiders cover their tracks. So, well, again, thank you all for attending. Esteban's email is there. Again, Esteban has been doing this and I've been working with him for a long time. He's quite experienced. Viva is a brilliant recent addition to the staff. And then there's me. So if you want to reach us, you know how to find us. You can see here what our other services are besides data breach. Happy to help with anything we can. Thank you again. I'll close it out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.